Hi, this is Andrew Aversa, and today I'll be demonstrating the newest Impact Soundworks virtual instrument, Shreddage Bass 2. This has been one of our most popular requests. The original Shreddage Bass was a picked bass library, and it had a sort of a simple engine to it. It sounded good, but it wasn't anywhere near as deep as Shreddage 2, Archtop, or IBZ, our newer instruments. So with Shreddage Bass 2, this is an all-new bass. It's a 6-string, custom-made, one-of-a-kind from McElroy basses, and it goes all the way down to G. So this is super low if you want to use it for rock and metal. But because it's fingered instead of picked, it's actually very flexible. You can use it for jazz, funk, pop. It was recorded by Tony Dickinson, who is an amazing session musician and composer. He's toured with Trans-Siberian Orchestra. He's done production music for Warner Chappell. And all around, he's just an amazing musician. So it was great to work with him on this project. Right off the bat, if you've used our newer virtual guitars, you'll be familiar with the interface. We've got our perform page with the fretboard and essential controls. There is an articulation page where you can map any of the articulations pretty much any way you want. We've got engine controls for all of the stuff like noises, pops, realism. And then we've also got an effects rack, which you may have seen in a bunch of the other Impact Soundworks instruments. This one has a slightly different order. We have an extra EQ here, and the compressor is earlier in the chain. So this is a bit more like what a lot of bassists use. This was recorded clean, DI, much like the original Shreddage Bass and our other guitar instruments, because this way you can put whatever effects you want. So here's what it sounds like just dry out of the box. This is the simple sustain articulation. It's got the release noises turned on, and it's got hammer-on legato and pull-off legato enabled. That's the basic sound of the library. We recorded all 6 strings in great detail and different dynamic layers, round robins. So, if you're playing softly, as you play harder, of course, you get more of that string popping sound as the strings are pulled harder. You also notice the release noises sound really nice. And those can be changed on the engine page. So if I turn them up, you get that lovely sound as the keys are released. You can also change the threshold. So on short notes, you don't get the release noise, or for really long notes, you don't get it. Now, also, as I play harder, again, you get that popping sound on the strings on the higher dynamics. There's also the ability to add more of a sort of a pre-pop, which is something that was in the original samples. So as you're playing the keys, you want them to be responsive. So we left about 30 milliseconds between when the finger first touches the strings and when you first hear the tone of each note. You can change that down here. That makes it sound a lot snappier, but then you lose some of that nice sort of finger attack. So we actually recorded the pops separately, and you can add those in at any level. The equivalent of this for something like Shreddage 2 would be the extra pick sound. We can add a delay for the pop, so something like this. And that's a great way to get extra emphasis on certain notes. You can adjust the delay however you want, the volume, the dynamic threshold, all that good stuff. That's just another way you can sort of customize the amount of noise you get. Some playing styles you might want lots of that kind of dirty finger noise and popping. Other styles you want to keep it clean. So with these controls on the engine page, you can kind of set that up however you want. So with the fretboard here, again, this is pretty much the same kind of thing that you saw in Shreddage 2 and IBZ, although we've actually revisited the engine that selects which string to use and which fret, and so it should be a lot more realistic this time around. It should sound a lot better. In terms of double tracking, you have 2 tracks available, so if you want to pan one left and right, you can do that. There's also stereo double tracking. We'll go back to one bass for this. On the advanced tab here, you can see your fret preference range. These are the frets that the instrument will prefer to play on. So if you want to play higher up by default, if I just like, hit some random notes, it'll kind of try to stay in that range when it can. But if you're already holding a note, it might still go outside of that range. You can force it even more to stay in that range with this new icon here, this exclamation point. So by doing that, it will really, really try to play in this range. If we play the same thing in the lower range, it might be more like this. So how you set up the fret range actually has a huge impact on the tone. And with these slightly tweaked controls in the engine, you can sort of specify that with even more depth and accuracy than our previous instruments. Checking out some of the different articulations, we've got staccato here mapped to a key switch. Harmonics, which sound great. Again, when I was playing with the sustains here, I had the hammer on by default between 40 and 127 with a range of up to 3. So if I play an E to a G, I get the hammer on. If I turn this down to 2 and I play that same interval, then I don't get the hammer and pull. Then we also have portamento slides, which sound really good. These are to and from everything. I'm just setting this across the whole range as an example. As with our other instruments, you can change the volume of the transition, the sustain volume, the speed, so we could turn up the transitions even more. And we have those to and from every fret, every string. Then we have the effects slides, which are basically all sorts of cool slides up and down each string. There are over 100 effects slides, and these are really great sort of at the beginning or the end of a riff or at the beginning or end of a track. They're also provided as wave for this library as well. Going back to the engine page, we have some of the same features you know and love from our other instruments. For example, the ability to split MIDI channels. If you have a MIDI pickup or MIDI guitar, we have anti-repetition. There's the ability to trigger legatos only when the sustain pedal is down. Velocity to volume, that is a standard control. The more you turn it up, the more velocity affects the volume of the notes that you play. But we also have this new feature called scaled. Basically, let's say you have sustains from 0 to 64, then you have staccatos from 65 to 127. By default, if you were to do this, the sustains would only ever be at half of their max volume because 64 is half of 127. But with scaled, if you play 64, that's the maximum of the mapped range, so that will sound at max volume. So it's just another sort of bonus feature. It's more for advanced users and very custom mappings, but we think it's pretty useful. Checking out some of the effects, again, you may have seen these in some of our other instruments, but we have a 4-band EQ, compressor, there's a distortion pedal. The amp and cab, we've got some custom bass cabinet impulses. Then finally, there's also a chorus and delay. Last but not least, at the bottom here, the Advanced tab reveals controls that can be used to further tweak the instrument. Some of these we added to Shreddage 2 IBZ, and soon we'll be adding it to the entire Shreddage line. But this is a way of getting really in-depth. For example, the legato transitions for portamento. You can assign key switches for things like string select, tapping mode, retune for the anti-repetition, how many semitones you want to retune. And then new to this is the repetition threshold. So we have a thrash note, just like in Shreddage 2. In this case, I have it assigned to F sharp. So if I go back to the original page here, advanced, F sharp 0. Okay, so it just plays the last played note. So it's kind of handy if you're riffing on a single note and you don't want to just kind of lift the key each time. The repetition threshold, if you play the same note in very quick succession within the threshold, it will add an extra offset. So instead of getting that full finger attack or pop each time, it'll cut into that a little bit. With this off, here's what just riffing on E might sound like. So notice that with that, we're getting a pop a lot of the time, and with the threshold up a little bit, I'll play the same thing. As you can hear, we're not getting that finger attack each time, so it's a little bit better when you're playing the same note over and over again for realism. And you can adjust the offset of that or just turn it off altogether with the threshold knob. Shreddage Bass 2 is available now from Impact Soundworks with a special discount for people that purchased the original Shreddage Bass library. It's a fantastic addition to any virtual rock or metal setup. That is basically what we built it for originally, but because it's DI and fingered, you can really use it for a whole range of styles. So much more so than the original. It's just hugely flexible and a lot of fun to play. This has been Andrew Aversa, signing off.